back, and I am Scruffy. I got my old hat on here with my floppy brim. Kind of, well, it's not floppy, but it's all bent up. You could tell I didn't do much prep uh, physically for this episode, but we got to get it in anyway. See, I'm seeing light reflections and everything else in the glass back here. Anyway, it's been a chaotic day. If the tilt of my hat doesn't clarify that for you, the more you see my hat tilted, the more you just know it's been one of them days, right? Uh, but what's up, folks? We're back for our, I was going to say midweek, but it's kind of the beginning of the week. Used to be a midweek show when we were on doing it on Wednesdays. Uh, Big news happened today with Governor Abbott, so we're going to cover that. We're going to have a little bit of vaccine talk, some discussion about voter laws that's going on in Arizona. It's happening in multiple states. There's some changes as well. And actually, you know what? I didn't pull it up, but let me go ahead and find it. There's some updates in Georgia as well in regards to voter laws, and so there's a lot happening in that space. So it's pretty interesting to see it happening so fast, and the response from people, even some friends who think the pandemic was brought on just in time to force at home or mail in voting, because that was the reason Trump lost, because Republicans can't mail in ballots. Yeah. Okay. All right. So before we get started, I want to shout out earlier in the show this time. I want to shout out my favorite artist. Let me move the camera up here. Duga with the Basquiat back here, and then this one of Bob Marley. So yeah, just want to shout out Duga there. Also, I want to give a shout out. I just got my book in last week or so, and this book is Testing Business Ideas. Uh, it's kind of whitewashed. I need to adjust the white balance on here again. There we go. Get a little farther away, and you can see some of the colors on there. But it's Testing Business Ideas. It says you're holding a field guide for rapid experimentation. Use the 44 experiments inside to find your path to scale. Systematically win big with small bets by testing business ideas. Now, why am I showing this? Well, there's only one purpose I have the book. You can't see it. Now, I don't want to open up the software because it'll end up making the camera all dark until I get it fixed and all that. But it's by David J. Bland. I don't know who to do this. I saw him on Twitter. We were talking about something, or I commented on something he posted. Saw he had a book and was like, well, let me check it out. But it actually it fits because it's about business, which if you don't know by this show, I love talking about business. So some pretty cool experiments in here and just things to consider. So digging into that one. So one day, I keep buying books and saying I'm gonna get into them one day. Doesn't always happen, but I'm gonna read them one day. When all the technology goes away, I'll finally sit down and I'll read the books. But anyway, all right. So one of the main things I wanted to talk about before Abbott announced that he was opening up Texas was misinformation. So the very, very first episode of PFA was I forget the title, but something to the effect of fake news, isn't new. We've always had it, sort of thing, right? And I broke down like a bunch of historical points to understand what was going on with fake news. Why did fake news exist? What, other instances of fake news, things like that, right? This was 2018. So this is the fourth year we've been doing PFA, uh, which is a long time, a lot of commitment to this project. But I come here for you guys. And so the uh, the episode I was talking about things and kind of went back through all the way back to Jesus, right? Like he was killed over fake news, right? A disagreement over politics, basically, right? So the idea that fake news is something new uh, is just not true. But what's happening right now is completely different. We're reaching a place in technology where people aren't reading, right? And I apologize for looking over, but I'm getting something set up over here. Uh, People aren't reading. They're not looking stuff up. They're not reviewing like the facts of a situation. Like you would be surprised how many people combat facts with memes. Like they're not they're not researching at all, right? It's no conversation about did this really happen, or is anyone truly doing this thing that you're saying you were slanted to believe. Um, People just it it's confirmation bias. They feel this way, therefore it's right. If somebody else said it, or they put it in a nice picture, but we're reaching a new plateau, and this for all the love I have for technology, this is scary to me, and it's scary until technology can find a way to identify it. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Um, I'm gonna show you this video, and then I'll explain.
That's why.
Oh,
It's just it's a little embarrassing. You know, it reminds me. I was once in Russia. I ran into Gorbachev. He said, "You know, Mr. Movie Star, are you nervous?" I said, "No, Mr. Gorbachev, I'm not nervous. I don't." He goes, "Well, remember how much a polar bear weighs." I said, "Polar bear?" He said, "Enough to break the ice." It's the last time I've ever seen Mikhail Gorbachev.
What's up, TikTok? You guys cool if I play some sports?
just look closely.
I love it. More for the audio experience. As much as the momentum. Hey, listen up, sports and TikTok fans. If you like what you're seeing, just wait till what's coming next. I'm gonna show you some magic. It's the real thing. I mean, it's all the real thing.
That was not Tom Cruise. Now, if you were just watching that, and like I have the live feed over here, and I'm just looking at it replay right here. When you're looking at that, it would be hard pressed to tell somebody that that's not Tom Cruise, unless you knew, without a doubt, some particular piece of his face or a smile or something. Like he even tried to get the mannerisms, the real intense type stuff. The smile, the laugh, he's going a little bit over the top. But this is a TikToker, a TikToker. Is that the term? Is that who we call him? He's posting these videos on TikTok, and these videos are deep fakes. So if you can't tell that that's not Tom Cruise, and let's say he was doing something salacious, it doesn't matter. Pick what it is, right? If they had him cheating on his wife or having sex with a man or whatever would, you know, pick the topic. It doesn't matter. Whatever would be salacious enough to slander Tom. Um, how would you know? How would you know what I just showed you was not Tom? You wouldn't. So this is where I say, unless there's some technology that comes out, something that comes out to identify, to find the seams, we're here very early. Now, I've discussed this before. We talked about deep fakes. Um, I thought we were a few years out, but that is amazing. We've seen, I think it was on Jimmy Kimmel, or one of the late night shows. They did that sort of deep fake on the fly kind of transition sort of thing, and that's harder to do. To do it live, it's very difficult because you have angles, like you can see even on my face here, like the lighting. It's very difficult to replicate that kind of stuff. Um, and so it's very difficult to do it and keep it smooth live. So that we're not there yet, but in a recorded sense, you can go in, manipulate, tweak, edit, that kind of stuff. But that right there, like normally I can see pieces, and I watched that. Watched it now 3 or 4 times, and it's not easily seen. So why is this? Why is this a big deal? We live in a time where memes fly around and people are like, "Yep, like, heart, share," and they've not looked anything up. So could you imagine if there was a video out there of Trump actually peeing on Russian girls, Russian hookers, or whatever the salacious story was? If somebody told you that wasn't real, would you believe him? If you actually saw somebody look just like Trump, face and everything, body shape that kind of looked a little similar, that, we don't know what he looks like with his shirt off right now, but, so they could probably take some liberties. But, you know, would you really believe that that wasn't him? If you love Trump, probably not, because he's literally said stuff on camera that people have gone to the ends of the earth to defend, even though he said it live on camera in the exact way, and then came out later and clarified that that's what he meant with no equivocation, right? Again, now sometimes people got stuff wrong. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about believing facts when they're in your face right now. It's hyper partisan. So if you love Trump, you would dismiss it. If you hate Trump, you would believe it outright, right? Like you'd be like, "Oh, did you see that?" And they'd be like, "Nah, man, that's fake." Man, I saw him. That is him. I saw like the way his hairline. Like people are going to be nitpicking this thing on the superficial level, not realizing how intense, how intensely perfect some of these deep fakes are going to become. So just imagine. I used the example earlier on Facebook. People still, up until I think Christmas of last year. So within the last few months, still we're saying that Trump brought Christmas back. Like saying Obama got rid of Christmas and we couldn't celebrate Christmas, even though Obama celebrated Christmas every single year, 8 years straight, tree, Merry Christmas messages, from him and Michelle, like all of that. They still say Obama never did it. Now imagine if Obama was mimicked in one of these deep fakes. I don't know why I'm pointing over there. There's nobody over there. Imagine if Obama was mimicked in a deep fake. And that deep fake was so spot on. Voice, mannerisms, everything. We've already seen one that was a deep fake, but it was clear. They made it clear that it was a deep fake. Imagine if he came out and said something mind you, I'm talking about Christmas, superficial stuff right here. But imagine if he came out and they had him bashing Christmas and praising Muslims and all this stuff that they already say. How would you convince those who hate Obama that the video they're looking at that shows him saying the things that they can see coming out of his mouth, or not see but hear coming out of his mouth, are not real? How will you do that? See, we're at a time, from a technology standpoint, that to me is just very, very scary. It's very scary because that level of deep fakedness, whatever, that can wreak havoc from elections to anything. So just imagine, let's say the election's on November 3rd, November the 1st, or whatever, let's say the Friday before, the 30th or whatever. They release a deep fake video that shows the presidential candidate saying some disparaging things about voters, about what he's going to do, what she's going to do, how they did this sort of. Just imagine if they do that right before the election. There's not enough time. There's not enough time to correct it. It'll take off. It'll go like wildfire. There's no way around it. It's going to spread like wildfire. And what are you going to do? I mean, literally, what would you do as a campaign to combat that, other than say it's fake? But how? How are you going to prove it? Right? Let's even shorten the time. Let's say they did it on Sunday. They did it on Monday or Tuesday morning. How would you combat that? This is a whole new, I don't know if you understand that, but the implications here are massive, massive, because people just don't take the time to look into stuff. We're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. I do the stuff too. Sometimes I'll just see something like, yeah, share it. And then afterwards I'm like, let me actually verify that. I'm a lot better than I used to be, but you're going to have to get to the point where you don't accept what you see as fact. I mean, think about that. What you see is not real. How will you know what's real? I was talking to Chris right here in the middle earlier, and he was talking about how much CGI has just become so common in the movies these days. And he's right. It's so common now that we see it, and it's just like, oh, CGI, whatever. That's cool. Not a big deal. Rewind 20 years to our 20-year, well, for me, 21-year-old self, seeing a CGI video from today would have blown everything out the water from 20 years ago. It would have been unreal. Like, no, that had to be real, right? Because you could kind of see the CGI, right? Kind of look like a dinosaur is in the movie screen behind a person that's kind of fake running, right? That sort of thing. You could kind of tell this is a whole new world. There's no way around it. This is a whole new world. So I'm very concerned. I'm concerned about that. I don't know where that's going to leave us. I don't know how we're going to combat deepfakes, but you can rest assured people are going to exploit that to the tune of trying to start wars, you know, going to the point of, especially everything's now remote, right? Like, imagine if they could get that deepfake technology real, utilize some internal computer, virtual camera inside of, your computer. So the virtual camera is somewhat like starting one program that outputs a camera feed and can be used in another. So like I could take Ecamm, which is what I'm using to stream this video. I could take Ecamm, use the virtual camera, and all of this stuff, everything that you see here, the frame, all of that, I could use inside of, say, Zoom or something, right? So that's a virtual cam. So imagine if somebody had that deepfake technology live using a virtual cam or whatever, to where that was their camera going through Zoom. What could they do with that? Like, we're going to have to, there's like no way around it. We're going to have to, with technology, find a way to pinpoint deepfakes. Woo! Be ready. Don't believe what you see. What? That's just mind blowing to even think. Don't believe what you see. What you see is not real. That's insane. That's insane. All right. Biden says the U.S. will have enough vaccines for 300 million adults by the end of May. This is on Axios. President Biden on Tuesday said that ramped up coronavirus vaccine production will provide enough doses for 300 million Americans by the end of May. This is why it matters. That's 2 months sooner than Biden's previous promise of enough vaccines for all American adults by the end of July. The accelerated timeline also comes on the heels of pharmaceutical manufacturer Merck teaming up with Johnson & Johnson to quickly produce its one-shot COVID-19 vaccine. J&J's vaccine received its emergency use authorization last Saturday, joining Pfizer and Moderna on the vaccine market. The big picture, coronavirus cases and deaths have ticked down since the holiday season, but public health officials continue to argue Americans to not let their guard down, or not to let their guard down. Yet on Tuesday, both Mississippi and Texas governors lifted all mass distancing restrictions in their states. Local ordinance may still apply. So, good news. The vaccine is going to be ready for 300 million adults. And we're going to touch on Mississippi and Texas, or specifically Texas, here soon. So it looks like we could potentially have the whole of the United States. United States is what, 320 million people, something like that, here. So looks like we could have enough vaccine for everybody. Not sure everybody will take it. But I also saw, I didn't bring up the story, the CDC is looking to adjust their guidelines to say if you've had the vaccine, then you should, you can gather at home in small gatherings. People were doing it anyway, vaccine or not. So, is what it is, sort of thing. But Abbott has decided that he's going to go ahead and lift the entire restrictions from the state of Texas. So I should have used this graphic for the cover. Oh well. Uh, this is just a much better graphic with the background. I didn't like the other one that I have, but is what it is. It's from his press conference today. The one that's on the PFA cover. All right, so this article takes us to end all coronavirus restrictions by Jacob Knutson, which was the dorm name my first year in college, Knutson. Texas will end its coronavirus restrictions next Tuesday with an upcoming executive order, Governor Greg Abbott announced on Tuesday during a press conference in Lubbock. This is why it matters. After Abbott signs the new order, which rescinds previous orders, all businesses can open to 100% capacity, and the statewide mask mandate will be over. Though large parts of the state will remain under mask local ordinance. This is what they're saying. It's now time to open Texas 100%, Abbott said on Tuesday. For nearly half a year, most businesses have been open either 75 or 50%, and during that time, too many Texans have been sidelined from employment opportunities. Too many small business owners have struggled to pay their bills. This must end, he added. The governor said the restrictions are no longer needed now that the state is more prepared to test for and treat the virus and is vaccinating more of its residents. By the numbers, Texas reported more than 1,600 new cases and 0 new deaths from the virus on Monday, according to the state's coronavirus dashboard. We'll pop that open and look at that in a second. Abbott said Texas gave out 216,000 vaccine shots on Tuesday, a record for the state, and that 5.7 million shots have already been administered in the state. The big picture, the Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves also announced Tuesday that the state will lift mask mandates for all counties on Wednesday, saying its hospitalizations have plummeted and our case numbers have fallen dramatically as well, according to an ABC affiliate. Rochelle Walensky, director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Monday warned states against lifting public health restrictions because coronavirus cases and deaths appear to be stalling after a recent decline. With the new statistics, I'm really worried about reports that more states are rolling back the exact public health measures we have recommended to protect the people from COVID-19, Walensky said. So, and well, you know what? Actually, before we do this, let me actually show this this dashboard here. So this is the new confirmed cases in Texas. You can kind of see on the chart here the first peak that we see, July 18th of 2020, hit a bit of a trough down here at a valley by September, and then we kind of spiked back up all the way up until January 15th, where we ended up having 21,000 new cases, and then we ended up dropping down here to only 4,900, which looks like, let's see, 3,600. Looks like that's about the same low that we had around the September time, and about the number of cases we had before the last rise that kicked off last June. So the new probable cases, which is different, this is just ones that are probable, possibly, right? Because we got to remember, COVID has symptoms that are very similar to the flu and other things, pneumonia, stuff like that. They're very similar. So it's a little difficult all the time to know exactly if it's corona or flu or something else. We did an episode all the comorbidities and things like that. You can take a look at that from last year. So we can see January 10th here, the probable cases were at about 3,800. And if we come down to today, about 1,700. And let's go back a few days because, reporting may take a little bit. 2,400 probable on February 27th. The fatalities in Texas back in July hit a peak, it looks like, of about 258, not 279, something around there, right? Just a little under 300. The highest peak that we had was about 367, something like that. Across here, it's a little hard to get these numbers from this little widget. So 367, and now we're down. It looks like the cases run behind a little bit. Or the deaths do. So about 84. It looks like 18 actually on the 24th of February. And either we're getting very low. Looks like one fatality yesterday. None on the 28th, 27th, 25th is 8. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm down here. You guys can't even see it on the screen. So I'm down here at the bottom of the chart. Looking here. Let me scroll a little more so you can see this. Yeah, so this down here. So if these numbers are accurate, if this is, what it is, looks like the deaths are down, which the two key things, we've talked about this so many times, I'm not going to belabor the point, but the two key things, obviously, are death and the hospitalization, right? Basically complications. Because coming out of that, if it's not death, you could end up having complications that cause lifelong problems, right? Like we've seen the reports of people, very, very fit athletes who have gotten COVID. And then once they get COVID, it's one of those cases where they just, they can't breathe right, or, whatever. Like there's all sorts of examples of that stuff happening. So those were the two things. And from what it looks like from that dashboard, it looks like the numbers are moving in a positive direction to where maybe this isn't too bad of a move. This one here, this is from the Texas Tribune. This is coronavirus in Texas. We've used their work before on the show. So this is talking about the vaccines. Those have increased. 6.5% of Texans have been fully vaccinated, which isn't a surprise because it's Texas. We're proud people. It's very, very likely that there's a lot of Texans who are just going to say, no, I'm not going to take it. But 6.5% have been vaccinated. As of March 1st, 5,611 Texans were hospitalized, which is a decrease of 1,353 patients compared to the week before. The new cases on March 1st was 1,637. Those are new confirmed cases, 344 new probable. And on March 1st, 59 new deaths. Okay. So see, this is why I wanted to bring this up, because the other one is the state-sponsored version, right? Like, it's possible that they may use a little bit of a different math approach right there. But for this, this is the Texas Tribune is a publisher who could also use different math. Don't get me wrong. But I've been following them since the pandemic kicked off, and they've been pretty square with their information here. And so I would urge you to check it out. It's texastribune.org. I won't give out the full URL up there. It's a lot of there's a lot of other stuff, slash blah 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 and a bunch of stuff. So maybe it's not as bad. Maybe it's not as bad of a thing. I know it's scary. Like I've watched what's going on Twitter, Facebook, people responding, and how it's so much of a mistake and things like that. And look, I get it. This time last year, we had an episode and we stated unequivocally, words are hard on a Tuesday after a long day, that it was uncertainty that was causing the pandemic shutdown, all that sort of stuff. In fact, 10 days from now, A year ago, on March 12th, is when the economy said, right, all based on uncertainty. We had, I think, less than 100 cases, or at least definitely less than 100 deaths, I believe, on March 12th of last year. Um, it wasn't blowing up, but we were so uncertain. We didn't know how to handle it. We didn't know how to treat it, all that sort of stuff. Well, now we have basically a year. Like we're over a year. We're almost 14 months into understanding that coronavirus is here. Remember, it came here. There's reports of it being mid-January, but it's most likely the end of 2019 is when it got here, like Q4 of 2019. But now we have more information. We know more about coronavirus, or this particular coronavirus called COVID-19. We know more about it. We know how to treat it. We have vaccines from 4 different companies, 3 of them that are up and available for emergency use. They're steadily improving on the vaccine. The vaccine has, I believe it may be Johnson and Johnson. It's just a one shot. You can take that. I believe it was Pfizer who reduced the amount that was needed in the shots. Like they're advancing, they're moving forward. We don't have an. I'm speaking specifically of Texas here. We don't have an overrun of hospitals where we're out of beds and that sort of thing anymore. Like we're at a place where we can manage it from an infrastructure standpoint. We have some knowledge on how to deal with it if we do start seeing spikes. The public knows how to operate, right? They're removing the mask mandate, but how many of you are really, truly going to remove the mask? I'm not, right? Like there are some times I've walked into a store, didn't have my mask, and was like, I forgot. Like I'm in the middle of shopping. It's like, well, I'm about to check out anyway. Too late. I done walked by everybody in the store 4 or 5 times already, right? Some people are just going to be like, well, now it's not mandated. The store allows you to walk in without it. They're just not. They're just going to go back to quote unquote normal, right? And I mean, it's choice. It's again last year through the whole beginning of the pandemic, personal responsibility, right? We can't pawn this off on other people, right? Now, I do understand there's a concern that employers are going to start making people come back to the office and all that sort of stuff. If they do, take your precautions. Wear your mask, socially distance while you're at the office, whatever that means for you, right? We have now, mind you, you're not going to wear the same equipment that nurses and things are, but we've had nurses, first responders, teachers who have been face to face with people, other humans, for the last, well, depending on the state and different in the industry, for the last year, right? First responders and stuff, definitely for the last year. Teachers, there was a shutdown, all that, blah blah blah. But we've had that, right? So we're not at the place where we don't know how to deal anymore. And it's inevitable that some state was going to be first, right? I believe South Dakota didn't do anything at all. I saw one of the, I think it was the governor speaking at CPAC. I only saw a small clip, but they said basically they had no state rules for Corona or something like that, right? And they were obviously like, rah, 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 which is to me just ignorant, right? Like people were dying, from this. We're over 500,000 deaths, right? It's serious. It's not some political hack job sort of thing, as a Republican friend said. It wasn't created magically for mail-in voting, right? It wasn't some magic, oh, let's do this so we can win an election sort of thing. There were plenty of better ways, plenty of other ways that were better at defeating Donald Trump, and a pandemic isn't a guaranteed win, and you got to start it in China. From what it looks like you got to start it in China and then hope it gets here and go through it. Like, I don't doubt the puppet masters of the world, but that's a far reach to do all that just for mail-in voting. Come on. Anyway, it was inevitable that this day was going to come. But for me, I'm not more afraid than I was yesterday. I'm not less afraid than I was yesterday. It's what it is, right? C'est la vie. It is. I mean, it's not really like a carpe diem sort of moment, but you know, you kind of got to live for the day. Today's here. I'm going to take the same precautions that I was taking yesterday. I largely don't go anywhere anyway. I'm concerned more about my wife, who's a teacher, to see what an online teacher, to see what the district does. And you know, it's very likely that these school districts may end up just saying, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to keep the online. We're going to still require masks and all that. Like, it could be. The private, well, not the schools, but the private businesses, they may rip those signs off the door and say mask required. I mean, largely, a lot of them don't necessarily require them anyway. But you know, it's one of those it's one of those things that you just have to take care of yourself. Is what it boils down to. You and yours, you're responsible. Make sure that you take care of yourself. You know, and along those lines, you know, there's and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you can see this article here. Louisiana police officer fatally shot over alleged mask dispute at a high school basketball game. Like, people are like, hey, killing cops over having to wear a mask. Why? Why? And then, I mean, there's supposedly some more things that we have to understand about that situation, but stay safe. Stay safe. You know, in Texas, we were largely open anyway. Like, the only thing was like capacity limits, right? Like, they just had capacities limits for churches and movie theaters and stuff like that. So, you know, we'll see. We'll come back. We'll see. It's either going to be spectacularly right or spectacularly wrong. Hopefully, it's the former. So the Supreme Court is likely to back or to favor Republican-backed Arizona voting laws. This is about Orlana Gonzalez. The Supreme Court on Tuesday appeared to favor Republican-backed voting restrictions in Arizona that Democrats argue violate the Voting Act's right of 1965. This is the Washington Post reporting, but this article is on Axios. Why it matters. The justice's decision in the case would weaken Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which prohibits voting practices or procedures that discriminate on the basis of race. The case, Brnovich versus Democratic National Committee, questions whether two Arizona voting laws. What is happening on Tuesday? Violate that section of the VRA. One allows ballots that were cast in the wrong precinct to be thrown out, and the other prohibits anyone other than a family member from delivering a voter's absentee ballot. The state of Arizona and the Republicans support the laws, arguing they are meant to prevent fraud. Democrats, on the other hand, believe the laws should be overturned because they believe they prevent voters, particularly minorities, from voting. How? Now, I'm not for these Republican shenanigans with voter laws. But let's look at what they are one more again. The case is they would throw out the ballots that were cast in the wrong precinct. That one, yes. We need to stop that. That doesn't need to happen. It is not that big of a deal from a voting infrastructure standpoint to say you voted at the wrong place. We need to move these numbers to the other place. We're looking at a video at the beginning of this episode of a non-Tom Cruise that looked exactly like Tom Cruise, but we can't shift a vote from precinct 1 to precinct 2. In 2021, we can't do that? How big of an issue is that? It can't be that big of an issue. Can't be. Not enough to be able to put some law in place. Throwing it out completely? Now, I haven't dug in to see if there's some sort of recourse in terms of them being able to recast that ballot in another place, right? Now, imagine if you're voting on election day, you vote in the wrong place, then you go and you find out, oh, your ballot was thrown out. Are you contacted to be able to go and take that ballot to another place? And then are you able to change your ballot, or are you just being a delivery man for the ballot that they could do in one big tin or whatever, drive it over or bin and drive it over to the other precinct? That one seems very foolish, but it's right in line with what we're seeing the Republicans do across the country. Now, the other one, it says it prohibits anyone other than a family member from delivering a voter's absentee ballot. Everything's not about race, right? Like I'm keen to pick up on racial undertones and things like that. But is there like a large swath of minorities who need people other than their family member to deliver a ballot? Is that really a thing that is only for minorities? That kind of stuff. I think that kind of stuff, I think it waters down the message of racial issues in America. Now, again, I'm surface on this issue. I haven't dug into it to dig into like what the actual changes in laws that they are trying, the actual language of it, which is what I normally would do, was actually go read the language of these things. But yeah, I don't see that one. I don't see that one. So that's why I say how. But along those lines, there is some movement. There's a new ad campaign by Abrams. If you don't know Stacey Abrams, that's this woman here in the picture. By Abrams Group, takes aim at Georgia GOP voting plan. Now, this Stacey Abrams, if you don't know, is who they are heralding as the person responsible for the win in this election in Georgia. She put together a multi-year campaign to turn Georgia blue, and it worked. So from the article here on Axios, Stacey Abrams' voting rights group enacted a multi-million-dollar ad campaign Tuesday, calling out Republican bills it says are designed to suppress voting in Georgia, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution first reported. This is why it matters. Republicans in battleground states like Georgia are adding barriers to mail-in and early voting, both of which helped President Biden win the state. Biden win the state in November and assisted John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock in taking the two Georgia Senates that gave Democrats balance of power in the Senate, according to the AP. Per the policy group, the Brennan Center for Justice, 33 states have introduced, pre-filled, or carried over 165 restrictive bills this year. We'll come back to that in a moment. Driving the news, Georgia's Republican-controlled Senate voted along party lines Tuesday in favor of a proposed law requiring more identification for absentee voting, the first in a quote-unquote raft of elections legislation, the AJC reported, or notes, I should say. Republican State Representative Barry Fleming filed a bill last Thursday that would end Sunday voting, require ID for absentee ballots, and limit drop boxes. He says the bill creates more uniformity to guide counties to run elections and restores confidence in the election system. It restores more confidence in the election system. Okay. All right. Let me keep reading. But NPR notes Fleming's plan will reduce the timelines for Georgia voters to request absentee ballots and for county officials to send them out. Of note, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who's a Republican, said last December, while continuing to push back on former President Trump's baseless election fraud claims, that no excuse absentee voting opens the door to potential illegal voting, per the AP. What they're saying, the Fair Fight Action ad, focuses on voting by mail, which the group notes Georgians of both parties have used as a method for decades. Almost half a million Georgia Republicans did it last year. And this is on YouTube. Let me see if I can actually, I'll do this while I'm reading this and yapping. Let me get this video pulled down so I can play it in a smooth way here. All right, here we go. Okay, so the last quote here, almost 500,000 Georgian Republicans did it last year. The GOP knows voting by mail works. It was their idea. It's how Republicans have been winning Florida. But now, the same Georgia Republicans who passed these laws want to make voting harder. That means longer lines, higher taxes, harder for you. Now, that's an excerpt from the ad. Now, I'll play the ad in a moment. Let me see. We have about 7 minutes. It looks like it's about a 30-second ad. Let me double check. Yeah, it's a 30-second ad. So here's the thing. Here's the thing to think about. And this is one of the things that I absolutely loathe about the Republican Party, is they want to have this sort of we're the what did Ted Cruz say? We're the party of the blue collar. He's tweeting from a clubhouse in a rich part of Houston. Well, he was probably at CPAC at that time, but the dude is loaded. Most of these, they're loaded. These politicians aren't blue collar anymore. How many of them are poor? Maybe like AOC is finally making good money. She's maybe, I don't know, she may have been able to stack 500,000 with all the other stuff that she's doing. So maybe she doesn't even fit anymore. But she came in after being a bartender, so she didn't have any money. She couldn't even afford an apartment to stay in Washington. So these parties aren't for the blue collar. But there are certain people that are out here actively trying to suppress votes. We've seen it time and time again. Time and time again. We've seen them try to suppress the votes. Why would they ever try to suppress votes? Because the running narrative is when the voting turnout is high, Republicans lose. Just in my lifetime, in my voting lifetime, that's been true. When the the voter turnout is high, Republicans tend to lose. Now, that's not for every race. It's not for everything, but they're afraid of voter turnout. They don't want you voting. This is what I was saying early in the episode. My friend is saying that the whole mail-in votes was the scheme to win. Republicans could have voted by mail. They're smart enough to use the post office, the internet. They can pull up a website, request a ballot. It's not that difficult. So, what is it? Voting on Sunday? That's going to help with fraud. That's what we're going with. That's going to cut down on fraud and protect the integrity of the election. Stopping voting on Sunday. Okay. I mean, I don't have to go through the stats of mail-in voting. Mail-in voting has been secure for years. Now, granted, absolutely, mail-in voting can be defrauded. Absolutely. Just like the lovely Trump supporter on video who talked about being put in jail in 2016 because she voted twice in 2 different places. She was on probation. Another lady, yeah, she ended up getting 5 years in jail for the same thing. Don't remember who she voted for, though. But this, I think, was 2016. They were trying to give her 5 years. This other lady ended up getting probation. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, though. But this is what we're dealing with. Like, I've said it many times. The case in, I believe, Tennessee, where the Republican operative, back to the Arizona thing with the voting laws, was actually picking up ballots because it was legal. They had a service where they could pick up your ballot and they could take it in. They pick up the ballots. They change the votes. Here's a Republican, right? Like fraud happens, but it happens at such a small level that it doesn't impact our elections like that. Now, I'm not saying it never can. I'm not foolish enough to walk down that rabbit hole. But they consistently try to block voting. They just do. They do. And I'm not even going to dig into gerrymandering. Like, that's a whole nother ball of wax. The whole idea of how they piece together these districts. But let's take a look at this ad real quick before we close out.
Georgians of both parties have voted by mail for decades. Almost 500,000 Georgia Republicans did it just last year. The GOP knows voting by mail works. It was their idea. It's how Republicans won Florida. Now these same politicians who passed these laws want to make voting harder. That means longer lines, higher taxes, more identity theft for seniors, harder for you. Tell Georgia politicians, don't mess with our voting laws. Verified Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I mean, okay. Kind of hits the points. Typical sort of political ad sort of thing. And then we saw the Republican joke, Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about it's not voter suppression. Standing in a line is like standing in a line at a grocery store. We're being suppressed in Congress because we have to go through I'm not joking. Like, this is literally what she's saying. We have to go through a metal detector and we have to stand in line. We're delayed getting into here to vote. That is real voter suppression. Ooh, child. I've tried to stay away from digging into things that lady's saying because she's short a few. Let's just say that. She's short a few cards. She's lacking a part of that deck, or she has a serious grift going. Anyway, we're PFA. We do this thing Tuesdays 7 p.m. and Sundays at 2 p.m. You can find us at politicalfreeagents.com. Make sure if you're on YouTube right now, stop, wait, hold, what? Don't close it. hit the like, hit the subscribe down there. That way you're notified. Hit the notification bell down there as well. So that you're notified. Hit the notification bell. That way you know every time we go live. We love it when you guys are in the chat, so join us in the on the YouTube chat. We'll catch you on Sunday. And also, it's coming soon. I keep talking about it. We're going to be releasing, looks like this week, the first episode of Catapulting, which is the new business, or the new business podcast that I'm doing, Business and Tech. So I'm really looking forward to that. You can go to catapulting.tv. Let me actually make sure. There's nothing up there right now. Let me make sure I got the right domain. Yep, catapulting.tv. Nothing there just yet, but the episode will show up there. You can actually subscribe up there. That's the audio, and there will also be a link to the video on there as well. So check it out, subscribe, be ready. Anyway, we're PFA. We're out. Have a great week.